Thank you for, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We will just give another minute or two for folks to join us, but we're glad you're with us this afternoon.
Oh. That's one, right? Not like. All right, yeah, I was in the middle of stuff. Thank you for coming and help today.
All right. As I say, thanks for coming this afternoon. We're going to give folks, I think, another minute or two to join us, but we're really glad you're here today. Again, for the folks who are just joining us, good afternoon. And we're going to give folks another minute or two to join us, and then we'll begin. We're glad you're here today. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started at 2:03. So one more minute. And again, welcome to folks who are joining us today. I'm glad you're here. And we'll get started in a minute. All right, well, I'd like to go ahead and officially begin with the Children's Services Council of Broward, Asset-Based Community Development Administrative Support Organization RFP Pre-Bid Conference. My name is Sue Gallagher. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer here at the Children's Services Council. I'm really excited to be a part of this team who is making this offering to the community. Today, you'll hear from a variety of CSC staff who will highlight information in the ABCD ASO RFP. We may reiterate things that are very important a few times so that the information is clear. We've set this up so that after each person presents their section, we'll pause for questions. So if you have a question, you may want to jot it down to keep it in mind. At the end of that section, I'll invite people to raise their hand and then call on people to ask their questions. We encourage you to ask questions, as your question is probably not the only one that people are thinking about, and it's really good to share your question with everyone else. You will have an opportunity until August 24th at 4 p.m. to submit written questions via the CAPS system, which is our contract and procurement system, affectionately known as CAPS, and you'll be hearing more about that today. We will be posting the responses to the questions by August 27th at 4 p.m. And it's important to note that the Q&A document that will be posted in CAPS supersedes what is said here in today's pre-bid. So what's written in the question and answer document that will be posted in CAPS by August 27th at 4 p.m. is the information to use in your application process. couple of things that are helpful hints that we may return to throughout this is that once you've written your application, it's a good idea to take your application and the scoring tool and give it to someone who doesn't know anything about your program. It's a really great way to see, are your ideas clear? Are they comprehensive? And are they understandable? So we highly recommend that before you hit submit in caps, that you share your application and the rating tool with someone who doesn't know you or what you're proposing to give you that feedback. I also want to share that the applications you submit are not rated by CSE staff. The council approves community source experts to rate the applications that you submit. So community source experts serve as the raters to score the applications that you submit. This recording for today's pre-bid conference will be available in caps after the session. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to our first presenter, Dr. Carl Dassey, who will speak to the RFP general information. Carl?
Good afternoon. I'm Carl Dassey. I'm the Director of Community Research and Partnering here at the Children's Services Council of Broward County. I'm happy to be part of this asset-based community development administrative support organization. The document I'll be sharing with you is actually posted on our CAP system. I do want to point out that before we begin today, we'll be using several acronyms over and over, which are defined in the RFP. But for help of comprehension, I'll let you know quickly what they are. One of those is actually Community Connector. A Community Connector is a resident who lives within the desired population areas we wish to serve. The second acronym you'll hear a lot is Civic Design Team, or CDT. The Civic Design Team consists of 5 to 7 community connectors and represents one of the communities within the desired population we are attempting to serve. The third acronym you'll hear quite frequently is CDT, or Civic Design Team Coach. A Civic Design Team Coach is a person who has 2 or more years experience living within one of the neighborhoods and desired populations and has served as a community connector before. The first thing I'd like to point out is our timetable for this procurement. Please understand, as Sue had pointed out, that the period for the submission of written questions is August 17th through August 24th at 4 p.m. We will repost those questions on our CAP systems by 4 p.m. on August 27th. You will also learn more about it through the procurement, but the deadline for the submission of the agency financial viability section, which is due in CAPS on September 1st by 4 p.m. The next thing is that the CSE will notify you in CAPS the results of your financial viability test results by September 8th. If for some reason your agency requires the use of a fiscal sponsor, the fiscal sponsor's audited financial statements are due in CAPS by September 11th at 4 p.m. We'll also explain that later as well. Be advised that the deadline for the submission of the RFP applications in CAPS is September 16th at 12 noon. That is September 16th at 12 noon. If your organization is rated high enough and an application interviews are scheduled, those scheduled interviews will be between September 29th and October 2nd. Who may apply? Applicants may be nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, incorporated or qualified to do business in the state of Florida, or government entities. Proof of nonprofit status, for-profit status, or government entity status must be submitted upon request by CSE staff. Interested parties must access the request for proposal from the CSE website. To access the RFP from the website, applicants are required to register their contact information as instructed on the website. Be advised that only registered parties will receive email notifications of the RFP updates and addendums. So whoever registers for this procurement, if you apply, is the person we'll be contacting with. In terms of the statement of desired population, this fits in CSC System Goal 1.2, research and evaluate systems of care. Objective 923, which is collaborate with community partnerships to promote child and family research initiatives. Why is my thing not changing? Here we go. Also, the desired outcome is to use collective impact strategy to improve child and family welfare being across the service systems of care. Please be advised the other outcome is that residents will create an asset-based, locally focused, and relationship-driven process that leverages the gifts, strengths, and capacities of local people to build more resilient and powerful communities. The CSC expects to budget approximately $358,500 for organization to provide ABCD administrative support organization services for 9 months. So the initial application is for a 9-month period in fiscal year 26-27. With council approval at the May 2027 budget retreat, CSC expects to budget approximately $468,000 for an organization to provide ABCD administrative support organization services for 12 months for fiscal year 27-28. It's our hope that the contract awards may be eligible for up to 4 renewal periods. Multiple awards may occur, but are not required to ensure countywide access to these critical ABCD administrative support organization services. These funds are subject to budget availability and CSC continuation of stated goal priorities. In the event that property tax collections decline, the CSC reserves the right to reduce or eliminate funding currently allocated for services awarded under this procurement. In terms of the desired population, the selected ABCD administrative support organization will partner with and support the desired population for this procurement who are neighborhood residents who are passionate about improving their local community and the life outcomes of children and families. These residents must live in one of the following areas. First, Lauderhill residents living in the Broward Estates and West Kenlark neighborhoods. Second, Fort Lauderdale residents residing in Fort Lauderdale City Commission District 3 as of the publication of this procurement. Hollywood residents residing in Hollywood City Commission District 6 as of the publication of this procurement. Pompano Beach residents residing in the Collier City neighborhood. West Park residents living in all the city's neighborhoods. Lauderdale Lake residents in the Carefree Cove Mobile Home Park and the Cypress Chase North neighborhoods. Due to the multilingual nature of these communities, funded applicants should be prepared to provide support in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole. In terms of the program's required components, asset-based community development is a citizen-driven framework that emphasizes the inherent assets and strengths of individuals and groups within a community, prioritizing these over perceived deficiencies and addressing communal challenges. ABCD promotes inter-neighborhood collaboration and partnerships with existing institutions and organizations that possess the necessary resources and infrastructure to facilitate desired community transformation. Desired community transformation is based upon cultivating social capital, and communities with higher levels of social capital are more likely to actively engage in decision-making, planning, and the implementation of citizen-led initiatives. It's important that all services for this procurement must be trauma responsive and healing by incorporating knowledge of trauma and healing trauma responses across all aspects of service delivery. Also, the provision of coordinated administrative support services for nonprofit organizations necessitates the development of capacity to ensure resilient, healthy operations, which is why the administrative support services are based upon the following best practices. 1, effective leadership. 2, effective operations. And 3, effective financial capacity. Research on neighborhood residents working collaboratively can improve the outcomes for children and families. However, to do so, they require an administrative support organization because of their limited fiscal capacity. We also conducted community conversations and a survey with participants of CSC's existing ABCD initiative, i.e. the community connectors who serve on the civic design teams, and also the residents who are awarded community building grants that we refer to as project champions. The community connectors are motivated to serve on the civic design teams, and their motivation is to improve the outcomes of the neighborhoods where they live, and their motivation is greater than the stipend they receive. The stipend is important, but it's always really the motivation for helping their community members that matters to them the most. However, the timely payment to the project champions for the community building grants is extremely important to the community connectors because late payments negatively affect the social trust essential to the social capital needed to encourage collective problem solving and democratic participation of the residents of your neighborhood. So one of the most important things of the procured asset-based community development administrative support organization services is a timely processing and payment for both the resident stipends, but also the community building grants. Specifically, in terms of the required components, there's 3 of them. First, partnering with the community connectors and the civic design team coaches. The ABCD ASO is responsible for partnering with the residents from the 6 neighborhoods with active civic design teams. A civic design team consists of 5 to 7 residents living in the desired neighborhoods who are referred to as community connectors. Each of the 6 neighborhoods have their own civic design team. There are also 3 civic design team coaches, current or former community connectors who help facilitate the work of the community connectors and 2 of the 6 civic design teams. Many of the teams already have active community connectors, and new community connectors will need to be onboarded. In terms of partnering with the community connectors, the asset-based community development administrative support organization is responsible for working with the CSC community building managers. So the ABCD ASO will support the community connectors who work collaboratively with the CSC community building managers to improve the outcomes of the children and families living in the 6 ABCD neighborhoods. So in terms of the CSC staff that the ABCD ASO will be engaging with directly in a very timely, frequent notion and nature of time, it's the staff we refer to as community building managers. The ABCD ASO will support the community connectors to participate in CSC's ABCD 101 and 201 trainings as a condition of their 1099 contractor agreements. The community connectors and the civic design team coaches are 1099 contractors. Provide logistical support in the CSE community building managers for the monthly civic design team governing and all team meetings, including the virtual meeting software, creating and maintaining a communication process and costs related to securing space. Participate in the all team learning community meetings. Communicate directly with the CSE community building managers to schedule and plan with each civic design team to implement their listing campaign, asset mapping, and community building grant schedule. Meet regularly with the CSE community building managers for collaboration on resident leadership, development, quality improvement, communication, and other strategy improvements to the continuum of care and other needed work. And finally, to implement the processes for meeting the CSE performance measurements. Be advised that there are 3 ABCD meetings that require administrative and logistical support for either the community connectors or the CSE community building managers. That includes securing venues, scheduling, and meeting preparation, etc. First, the civic design team meeting occurs monthly. The community connectors implement their ABCD initiative, listening campaigns, asset mapping, procurement planning. This is a regularly scheduled meeting and is held virtually or in person. 2, the civic design team's ABCD governing meeting held every 2 months. The community connectors invite the community to help co-design solutions that build on the neighborhood assets. This meeting is held in person and hosted in the community where the community connectors live. Hold on, I may skip the page there. And I did skip a page and I apologize for that. Okay. And third, the ABCD all-team learning community meeting, which is held every 2 months in person, and the location rotates throughout Broward County. In terms of the staffing requirement, the community connectors must be 18 years of age or older and live within the ABCD neighborhoods that their civic design team represents. They will receive stipends for 10 months and must complete the 2 CSC-sponsored ABCD trainings. Civic design team coaches must have at least 2 years of experience living in one of the ABCD neighborhoods and 1 year experience as a community connector or 2 years of experience in community engagement or social impact work. Be advised that the community connectors and the civic design team coaches are 1099 employees. There are additional staff your agency can hire, but that's up upon the agency's application. Second, background screening. CSC will cover the cost of background screenings. The administrative support organization is responsible for ensuring that all required documentation is submitted in accordance with CSC guidelines to receive reimbursement for these costs. Executive level positions, the executive director, the chief operating officer, the chief financial officer, should be budgeted under the administrative cost sections of the procurement and their budget. In terms of staff development trainings, CSC does offer a menu of training opportunities to support the staff development and professional growth. Specifically, though, in terms of the ABCD ASO RFP, the ASO staff and community connectors are required to complete the ABCD 101 and ABCD 201 trainings to develop, enhance their understanding of the ABCD principles. Cone of silence. The cone of silence is designed to protect the integrity of the procurement process by shielding it from undue influences prior to issuing a recommendation for contract award. It shall begin at the time of this advertisement, so we're under it now, and it will continue until the competitive procurement ends when the Children's Services Council makes its final funding determinations. Once the cone of silence is imposed, which it is, potential bidders, vendors, service providers, and consultants cannot communicate regarding this competitive procurement with the Children's Services Council staff, Children's Services Council members, or rating member members. If you have any questions about this procurement, you must submit them in caps by the dates that Sue talked about earlier. Terms of the agreement. The initial term of service for contracts awarded under this procurement is January 1st, 2027 through September 30th, 2027. Contract awards may be eligible for up to 4 renewal periods, contingent upon but not limited to availability of funding, history of performance, outcome achievement, past programmatic performance, agency viability, and successful negotiation of programmatic budgetary issues as follows. Please note the first renewal option will be October 1, 2027 and September 30th, 2028. And of course, you can see the dates for the second option, the third option, and the fourth option. Conflict of interest. All applicants must disclose the nature and the existence of any relationships with any council member, officer, employee of CSC, or any of their spouses, children, parents, or siblings, or with any entity in which any council member, officer, employee of CSC, or any of their spouses, children, parents, or siblings is an officer, partner, manager, director, or proprietor, or has material interest, such as a relationship may result in a disqualification of the application or may be considered in the award process. Such disclosure must be submitted in the application for funding in response to the relevant questions and conflict of interest. Okay, let's go to the cure process next. The CSC has established the option for applicant agencies to cure minor omissions and submitted proposals within the specified time frame allowed by the CSC, which is generally within 24 hours of CSC notification. The notification process is via email and/or telephone or voice call or mail with minimal turnaround of time. Failure to provide the request information within the allotted time may result in the rejection of your submission. This process is provided by the CSC as a courtesy, and as such, the CSC is not responsible for any omissions or errors in any documentation submitted by the applicant agency in response to the RFP or cure notice. Please remember, the individual that you identify in your application in caps under the proposal contact is the only individual who will be contacted regarding a cure. So ensure that the individual is available during the cure process time. I'd also like to show a couple of the key attachments that are really going to be important for this documentation. The first is the AFF, which is a few pages down. So the AFF starts on page 39 of the combined packet. and it's the application for funding for the ABCD Administrative Support Organization. These are the actual questions that you will actually be required to answer in caps. Some of them are rated, some of them are not, but it's important that you complete all questions that are relevant, including all rated questions. To gain a deeper understanding of how the rating committee will evaluate your responses to the AFF, you can also go to page 47, which is attachment 2, the ABCD Administrative Support Organization rating tool. The rating tool provides you the actual responses and how the rating will be, the rubric for actually grading them. The first page right here tells you the scoring for the type of responses and the quality of the response for a 10-point question and also for a 15-point question. And the rating tool also goes through each of the rated questions that are in the procurement. This is available for you to see as well. And it gives you the criteria that'll be used to evaluate the actual scoring by the raters. The next thing I want to point out to you is a few pages down. Let me go over to it. Right here, it is page 67, I believe. 67 is CSC's core contract template. Please be advised that this is not negotiable, so we encourage you that you share it with your legal team now, because the core contract is basically what CSC will be using and you're required to use it. And this is the actual template for a core contract that will be used for this asset-based community development administrative support organization procurement. The next document I'd like to share with you is actually the ABCD Administrative Support Organization Scope of Work template. So this template is actually the template for the scope of work services that we will be negotiating with you. And I do want to highlight a couple things. In the staffing chart, you'll notice there's 2 positions that are highlighted in blue. These 2 positions that are highlighted in blue are positions that you can choose if you want to have, or the agency in their application explain the value if they want to use these positions or not. The civic design team coaches and the community connectors, this is the actual descriptions that will be required by CSC based upon our experience and based upon what we want. So the civic design team coaches and the community connectors and their stipends, which are specified in the budget section, those are not negotiable, but other positions are. And one thing I'd like to do is I would like to go back and show you the time frame one more time. I want to make sure I specify the deadlines correctly. So I'll go back to the top of the document if it allows me to do so. It seems to be frozen now. Give it just a moment, please. Okay, let's see if it allows me to go up. Well, it died. So let me reopen the document. What I want to confirm is the deadline for the fiscal viability test. I may have misspoke on that. So let's open it up again one more time. I do apologize for this. Sue, can you see the procurement back on the page?
Yes.
Okay, so back up to the very top of it. So I'll make sure I got the calendar dates correct.
People can also reference page 5 of their copy of the RFP.
Thank you, Sue. And the fiscal viability test results are actually due on September 1st. And CSC will notify you of your financial viability test results on September 8th. And if you're required to, or if you have a fiscal sponsor, the fiscal sponsor must report their audit financial statements by September 11th. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Carl. At this time, I'd like to invite anyone who has a question about the material that Carl presented to raise their hand. Okay. Not seeing any questions at this point. Want to remind folks that you can submit a written question via CAPS if it comes to mind afterwards. And if it comes up during one of the later question sections, you're also welcome to share it then. So seeing no questions, I'd like to pass the mic to Dr. Marissa Greif-Hackett for performance measurement.
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to talk about the performance accountability section. Carl's going to bring it up so you can look at it. All right. So I'll provide an overview of the performance accountability section, section I, and I won't be, talking word for word for all the sections here, but you can read everything in more detail from pages 14 to 16, and then I'll be referring as well to attachment number 3. That's going to contain a little bit more detail about the performance measures that you'll be responsible for. We use a results-based accountability model to evaluate our programs, and it's founded on 3 questions. How much did we do? How well did we do it? And is anybody better off? We also view the data collection cycle as an opportunity to learn and improve services while doing the work. And this is done collaboratively with providers and CSE staff. Carl, if you could advance to attachment 3. Thank you. The performance measures matrix here in attachment 3 outlines the proposed evaluation measures. We expect to use a variety of means to look at performance, such as meeting attendance, satisfaction surveys, funds payment processes, participants' feelings of impact on their leadership skills, and participants' perceptions of community impact, to just name a few. We require data to be entered into our database delivery system, and we review those data regularly to ensure that they are entered in a timely basis. We also review a selection of hard copy documentation during program performance reviews to ensure that it's completed according to our business rules and entered in the database accurately. And I invite you to explore those sections in more detail, and I will stop for questions.
Thank you, Marissa. If you have a question about performance measurement, performance accountability, data management, this is your opportunity to verbally ask that question by raising your hand. All right, there being no questions, we can move to the next section, which is the Contract Administration and Procurement System, affectionately known as CAPS. And for this, I will turn it over to Pooja Yajnik. Pooja?
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Pooja. Thank you, Sue. I'm the Assistant Director of Operations and overseeing the electronic system where you'll be submitting your application. So as previously mentioned, it is an electronic application. All responses must be submitted through our Contract Administration and Procurement System, also known as CAPS, by the deadline that is noted on the RFP. Any late submissions, missing of deadlines, the application will shut down for you and you no longer will have access to it. If you are not familiar with the system, there is a video tutorial. A link to it is placed on the CSE website, same place where the procurement is placed. It is also in the solicitation attachments. Once you log into the system, you have it available there as well. If you are a new user, you do need to register to use our system. The process is explained in the video tutorial, and it's also a very self-explanatory process of opening an account. If you're a returning user, all you need is your username and password. If you have forgotten your password, there is a forgot password link. If you do that, there'll be automatic steps for you to go in and access your account. All technical questions must be submitted to CSC on the use of the system, or if you're having any challenges, through helpdesk@cscbroward.org. The help desk will be available to you throughout the procurement timeline. However, we do request that you submit your difficulties or any questions well in advance. We are open Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Responses will be given through the help desk. But if you're waiting till the last minute, an hour before it's due, you're having challenges with the system, it may be difficult for us to respond, and we don't want you to miss your opportunity to submit your application. So again, if you're having any technical difficulties, please make sure that you submit a ticket, an email through the help desk at cscbroward.org. The email is available within the procurement document. If you're going to ask any programmatic questions through the help desk, they will not be answered. The help desk is only for technical questions. Any opportunity to ask programmatic questions is only available today and up until the deadline that was previously mentioned, that the Q&A is open for. So within the CAP system, within your application, whether you're on the landing page or inside your application, there's a Ask a Q&A button on the top gray ribbon that's available to you until it expires. And then once it expires on August 24th at 4 p.m., it will expire. It'll disappear from there. But that's your link where you need to go in. And if you have any programmatic questions, you need to ask it through there if you don't have the opportunity to ask it today. Responses will be posted on the solicitation attachments. That attachment will be marked as new. There'll be a little writing that says NEW new in quotations, and that's your document that you'll refer to get all the answers that were asked today or that came in online to the CSC staff. The answers will be posted on Thursday, August 27th by 4 p.m. I also want to note the importance of the financial viability deadline. If that deadline is missed, if you don't submit that particular section to CSC by September 1, you will become ineligible to move forward. You will not have the opportunity to submit the full application. So it is very important that you submit your financial viability in the system by the deadline that's noted there. Once you submit that, CSC staff will give you the test results for your financial viability, and you will be required to accept them or select a fiscal sponsor. If you select a fiscal sponsor, there is an additional deadline for the fiscal sponsor to submit their statements. If they fail to meet that deadline, you will not be able to proceed with the submission of the application. So please be very mindful of these two deadlines that need to be satisfied in order for you to do a full submission of your application. In addition, the application that is posted within the CAP system, you'll notice that there's word limits. Please adhere to the word limits. The system will cut you off if you try to go beyond the word limit. It might allow you to paste, but you'll see that it cuts you off the minute you move to the next section. There is no availability for you to format your text in rich text. It's just a plain text box. Just a note to type it in. If you're typing it in, you cannot format your text. And that, I believe, takes care of my part here. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Pooja. As a reminder, if you have a question, please raise your hand. All right, thank you. We will move to our next presenter, Mina Razavi. We'd like to present on the fiscal piece.
Thank you, Sue. Good afternoon. My name is Mina Razavi. I am the Assistant Director of Finance. I will begin by reviewing a crucial section of your RFP submission, the agency's financial viability section, which you can read in more detail on pages 18 and 19. Your agency's most recent audited or reviewed financial statements that cover the latest fiscal year end must be submitted in caps before submitting the RFP application. The financial must be submitted by Tuesday, September 1st by 4 p.m. Based on the audited or reviewed financial statements submitted, CSC will perform the financial viability test, which determines the maximum funding that may be awarded to an agency. Before we continue, let's explain the difference between reviewed and audited financial statements. You can read more in detail on pages 30 and 31. Agencies with annual revenue greater than 500,000 must provide an audit conducted in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. Agencies that have less than 500,000 in annual revenues and have not been audited by a Florida CPA should submit financial statements that have been reviewed by a Florida CPA, regardless of how long the organization has been in existence. Reviewed financial statements include a statement of financial position, a statement of activities, a cash flow statement, and notes to the financial statements. The financial viability test will be conducted on the submitted reviewed financial statements. Please remember, if your agency is selected for funding, the agency must agree to provide an audit by an independent Florida CPA within 180 days after the end of the agency's fiscal year, after receiving the funds. Let's now continue with general information regarding financial statements. You can read more in detail on pages 30 and 31. After the initial review of the audited or reviewed financial statements, CSC allows for a financial viability review period for clarification or to provide additional financial information as requested. This period will also allow the agency to obtain a fiscal sponsor if needed. You can expect to receive the results of the financial viability test no later than Tuesday, September 8th. Applicants will receive an email with the results and will also see the results once they log into the application in CAPS. Please be sure to check your results. If you are currently funded by the CSC and have already submitted your agency's most recent audited or reviewed financial statements to the CSC, you must indicate this by checking the appropriate box in CAPS in the agency financial viability section. If you are currently funded by the CSC and utilize a fiscal sponsor, or if the CSC does not currently fund you, but you already know your agency will require a fiscal sponsor, you do not have to submit your agency's financial statements. However, you must indicate the agency is using or will be obtaining a fiscal sponsor by checking the appropriate box in CAPS in the agency financial viability section. Let's now give you information about fiscal sponsor, which you can read more in detail on pages 34 and 35. CSC will provide an unrestricted fiscal sponsorship fee directly to a fiscal sponsor to help offset the administrative costs incurred by the sponsoring agency. The fee will be up to 7% of the total funds awarded to the sponsored agency, not to exceed $25,000 annually. The fiscal sponsor's role is to receive and administer funding provided by the CSC, act as a capacity building resource for the agency carrying out the program activities, and serve as an accountable provider of record in a tri-party agreement. Agencies wishing to apply for funding beyond the restriction resulting from the financial viability test may secure a fiscal sponsor that can pass the annual fiscal test without restrictions. Let's now discuss your budget forms. attachment 10 in your RFP package, program budget form. This is a critical part of the process, and we have provided some resources to assist you in creating your program budget form. Your guidelines for preparing the budget are included in attachment 9. Some areas of your budget include startup expenses. On page 20, you may include startup expenses in your budget. Startup expenses are budget items needed in advance to prepare and start the program. These may include, but are not limited to, hiring and training staff, preparing sites, purchasing materials, furniture and laptops, and recruiting participants before direct service delivery. Unit of service on page 21. Units are expenses that are not reimbursed on a cost reimbursement basis, but are rolled up into unit costs. These are your operational costs. The expenses that determine the unit costs include your salaries, benefits, local travel, materials, and supplies. Once awarded, your contract will identify the maximum number of units that can be billed to the CSC. Match requirement on page 23. There is a funding requirement of at least a 5% match for all funding provided through the CSC, as we seek to fund projects that can operate in a fiscally sound manner. Your match can be provided as cash or an in-kind contribution, such as volunteer, administrative overhead, equipment, or a space dedicated to the project. Administrative costs on page 23. Applicants may request up to 12% of the total direct service costs in administrative costs to manage the project. Administrative costs support the operation of your entire agency as a whole and are related to the agency's day-to-day operations and pertain to operational expenses rather than those expenses that are directly related to the provision of service. These include, but are not limited to payroll costs, management staff salaries, and audit fees. Now let's discuss your financial viability and performance requirements in more detail on pages 30 and 32, attachment number 7. All agencies requesting or renewing funding from the CSC must demonstrate financial solvency utilizing a financial viability test based on audited financial statements, which is a required section of your application. The statements you submit will allow us to perform this test. Now let's review the financial viability test form to gain a better understanding. Financial ratio. The test reviews 4 areas. Number 1, the current ratio. These are the current assets an agency has, which can easily be converted into cash to pay current expenses. Number 2, months of liquid net assets. This is the number of months of expenses that existing assets can cover without restrictions attached to them. Number 3, current liabilities as a percentage of annual expenses. This is the ability of an organization to meet its current obligations. 4, the debt ratio. This is the proportion of assets provided by debt. Once the total points are calculated, The final score will determine the maximum level of funding that may be awarded to an agency over the CSE fiscal year. If the score is 14 points or over, the status is no award limitation. If the score falls between 10 to 13 points, the status is conditional and award amounts will be limited to a maximum of $237,500 annually. If the score is between 6 to 9 points, the status is provisional and award amounts will be limited to a maximum of $89,000 annually. Funded agencies must maintain an ongoing capacity to meet CSE financial performance standards. If an agency's financial viability status changes during an RFP funding cycle, appropriate revisions to funding or contract terms may be necessary at the time of the renewal. Remember the deadline for submitting the agency financial viability section of the application via CAPS is Tuesday, September 1st by 4 p.m. Now I will turn it over to Dr. Sue Gallagher.
Thank you, Mina. And this is the opportunity to ask any questions that you may have related to the material that Mina has covered. Again, if you have a question, please just raise your hand and we'll call on you. Okay, so with that, I will turn it over to Lynn Combs, Senior Budget Analyst, to talk about the budget. Lynn?
Hi, everyone. My name's Lynn Kalmus. I'm a budget analyst here at CSC. And what I'm going to walk you through is an overview of how to prepare your program budget form. And then we will actually take a look at the program budget form, and I'll show you some examples of how to complete the form. So with that being said, let's get started. So the first thing we want to know or remember is that there are specific requirements within the context of this RFP, and that is that the community connectors are paid a $415 monthly stipend for January through September, and that information is located in attachment 1 under budget, page 9. The civic design team coaches are paid the $150 monthly stipend per team per month for up to 2 teams, in addition to their $415 community connector stipend for the 2 months. And again, that is on attachment 1, budget, page 9. Each civic design team will have $15,000 in community building grants, and that is attachment 1, budget 9 as well. The next item, again, these items are just an overview, and we're looking at expense line items for salaries and fringe, knowing that we're talking about the salaries and fringe, FICA. You may or may not have retirement contributions, health benefits, workers' compensation, and unemployment compensation. You will see all of these implemented in the form in just a couple of minutes. Again, some expense line items. Unit 1200 is local and out-of-town staff travel. Remember to use the federal rate times the approximate number of miles traveled per month. Unit 1300 is for contractual services and consultants. This is a direct service provider. These contracted rates are reflected on the CSC budget, and these vendors get a 1099 at the end of the year. You also have Unit 1600 for expenses and supplies, which is cell phones, printing, background checks, etc. The next item, space 1400, includes rent, utilities, janitorial costs. The total cost per square foot cannot exceed $27. If janitorial and supply and utilities are budgeted separately, then the maximum amount per square foot is $16 a square foot. 80/20 value added. This particular expense line can be used for gift cards for the tabling at community engagement events, provisions for community quarterly and monthly meetings, space rental. Sorry, I keep moving that forward. Food and refreshments, consumables, etc. You'll see examples of this when we go to the actual Excel template for you to see. Other cost reimbursement, this is specialized staff training and does not include training offered by CSC, which is free for funded program staff. You will see when we get to the actual Excel sheet, this is where you will see the CDT and the connectors, the community connectors are budgeted in this particular line item. Expense line items for startup, which was briefly touched on by Mina. These are costs that are incurred on or after the contract effective date and on or prior to the end of the first 90 days of the contract period. So in essence, the first 3 months. Startup expenditures may include, the staff that you're hiring to prepare the sites, curriculum materials, participants, recruiting efforts. We don't expect that there'll be much startup in this particular RFP, but there is a form there that you can fill in that information. Again, to what Mina previously mentioned, administrative costs, they are related to the day-to-day operation of an agency. They cannot exceed 12% of the total direct cost, and they cover items such as a financial audit, accounting activities, liability insurance, etc. Again, as Mina explained, there is a required match component, which is a 5% match, and that match may be in-kind match or it may be a cash match. You can see here acceptable in-kind contributions include volunteering, space that's dedicated to the project, whereas cash match would be funds that are from another unallocated source which directly support the program. So with that being said, let's jump right into the program budget form review so you can see an example of what these items are. And again, this is attachment number 10, and there's also attachment number 9, which is the budget guidelines. And it provides a more detailed explanation of what all these particular items are. So when you prepare your program budget form, the first thing you want to do is identify the year. We know it's going to be January through September of 2027. What you want to do is you want to gather the information that relates to what kind of positions you're going to have. Are they going to be full-time? Are they going to be part-time? What is the salary information? What is the hourly information? What is the cost of the benefits? What is the workers' comp rate? What is the health information? What is the retirement information? If you have these components, you may not have these components. And one of the first items that you would do is once you gather your benefit information, what you're going to do is you're going to come into the Excel sheet and you're going to basically put in the information. Once you put in the information into these identified orange blocks, they will automatically calculate what the costs will be. So in this example, we have retirement at being 3%. We have health insurance for 9 months at $400 a month. We have our workers' comp rate, which is 1.25%. And we have our SUTA rate, which is given to us by the state of Florida for the RT6. And that is the information that you would use here, where it would be 0.8% of the first $7,000 in salary. So once we fill in these line items, it will automatically generate this information here, as well as it will auto-populate these fields, and it will auto-populate the calculations from this chart over to here. I'm going to take a brief moment to jump to startup costs. So I want to show you how that works. If you do have startup costs, you'll see there's a little tab here. And again, this is all formula related. So what you fill in on the front page will automatically fill in on this page. Again, notice these items in orange. What we populated on the front page now has automatically populated on this second page. So if you are asking for startup salaries and benefits, you can have your formulas automatically calculated right over here. In this example, for this particular provider who's submitting an application, they're requesting 4 laptops at $1,000 a piece. So we see the item quantity is 4 at 1,000. It automatically does the formula for us, and it comes out to 4,000. We see a total amount of 4,000. This dollar amount of 4,000 is a rounded number, and it will automatically populate back to the first tab. We will see that in just 1 second. Then in the second line, we see supplies here. We're doing one order worth $350 of supplies. So we see 350. So what we're asking CSC for this particular procurement is a total of $4,350 in startup supplies. If we go back to our program sheet, we see that that particular item has automatically self-populated back into the spreadsheet. We don't need to add it. So with that being said, let's go back and take a look at our salaries and benefits. Again, as I previously said, you want to gather your information up front and find out the position titles, the name of the staff, what their annual salaries are, if they're full-time, part-time, and what those costs are. In this example here, we have an annual salaried employee, the community support manager is $74,000. It's a full-time position, but the salary says $55,000. The reason it says 55 is because we know we're in a 9-month budget, not a 12-month budget. So this calculation for this particular position was done based on the fact that it's a 12-month budget. They get paid twice a month. So there's 24 pay periods in a cycle in a year, but we're only paying 18 of those, which is 9 months. Again, your agency may use something different. It may be once a month they get paid, so the calculation would be done a little bit differently. You may get 26 pay periods in a year. It all depends on how you do your payroll. So once we have that amount in here, it automatically comes over to tell us how much is being charged. The salary, again, it's a formula, so the salary comes in. When it calculates the FICA, because we have this formula that's already here, so our FICA is automatically calculated. We've entered the 3%, so it automatically calculates our retirement. It automatically calculates our health benefit, and it automatically calculates our workers' comp and SUTA because we've entered the formula, we've entered the percentages, and then we have a formula here that is automatically calculating those amounts. If we look at the second position, a payroll specialist, we know $55,000 for the full-time position. Again, in this particular example, this is a 12-month budget, 12-month position. They have 2 payrolls per month, so a total of 18 payrolls. They are a 25% position. So the math automatically comes over and tells us that this person is going to be getting $312.50. This particular Excel sheet rounds the formula because we do not look for any pennies. We want to round up to the nearest dollar. Again, coming back, it takes the salary as the FICA, the retirement, the health, the workers' comp, and the SUTA. Those numbers then are transposed down here, so you don't have to enter them twice. They're automatically brought over by the formula. And so we see that our total salary and fringe benefits is $78,257. Going back to our prior PowerPoint where we showed the different expense line items. An example, here's the mileage for a consultant and our staff at 150 miles per month, 70 cents. You'll notice in this example, it's not the IRS rate as of today or as of January. And this particular provider has chosen not to max it out, but to use this because it works for their budget. So we know 2 people, 150 miles would be 300 miles for 9 months, 70 cents a mile, and you get your calculation. We also see item 1300 for contracted services. Again, in this example, this provider is not utilizing this service. Just remind you that this person must receive a Form 1099 at the end of the year. Space and utilities, if you're going to utilize this particular expense line item, refer to the CSC budget preparation guidelines. Remember, the max is 27 a square foot if you include janitorial and utilities, or 16 without. Here is an example of how we came up with our calculation for this particular person. Notice they didn't max out at the 27. They chose to use $26 a square foot, and that brings us to 29.4875. Again, a rounding formula in here that brings the total to 39.49. Under our expense and supplies, you'll see where we enter the information in to say what these items are. We have the project management materials, we have the office supplies, the cell phones, we have some level 2 backgrounds, we have the manager's phone. And again, we've done the calculations based on the 9 months at what the cost is to come up with a grand total of $9,195. Unit 1700, we are not using that in this particular RFP. Flex funds, we will not be using in this particular RFP. In the value added, we are using our community connector meetings, where this may be the rental space or, you know, some other consumable items that we need for our meetings. So again, we've put them in and done the calculation here. We have the community meetings. You'll see an example here, various meetings and trainings throughout the course of the 9 months and what we expect that cost to be. Again, the gift cards for the community surveys we saw in the PowerPoint, where under value added, we had said that gift cards for tabling events at community engagement events. Again, the mathematical calculation to show us how we got there. Under Unit 8050, here is where we see the community grant. These are the items that were listed on page 9 in the budget, where we know that $15,000 is given to each CDT grant. We see that $415 a month is given to each community connector, $150 to each CDT coach. And again, we've done the math based on the number of teams or the months or whatever it may be to come up with our total calculation. So our total programmatic calculation is the without the administrative cost is $232,000. We have our startup cost that brings us to $315,000. Coming back to one of our last 2 items is our administrative cost. We're allowed to claim up to 12%. Here you will see we've identified what those expenses are. We have our executive director's salary, and we're taking a percentage of that. Our audit, we're putting in a percentage of that. Our liability, we're putting in a percentage of that. So in this particular case, this provider is requesting $20,812, which is not the 12% of the total. It's 6.6% admin cost, not to exceed the 12%. And the last item that we have on the Excel worksheet is we know we must provide a match, and whether that is a cash match or an in-kind match, we have spelled it out here what it is. And in this case, our CFO is directly associated with this particular program. We've identified their annual salary and done a calculation based on their annual salary and entered that amount into the Excel spreadsheet to show exactly what it is, how this particular provider will be spending the funds if they're given. So, and just so you know, in this case, we know Carl stated originally that there is approximately $358,000 available. This particular provider has only requested $336,000. The cash match is not part of that calculation because it is in addition to the actual award amount, because this is what the provider is giving the up to 5% for. You can give more than 5%, you just can't do less than 5%. And that concludes my presentation. And just so you know, remember, in the attachment, item number 9 has the budget preparation guidelines, and it spells out every single line item and how to. Sue, back to you.
Thank you, Lynn. This is the opportunity to ask questions regarding the budget information that Lynn has shared. If you have a question, please raise your hand. We'll give folks a minute for budget questions, and we'll open it up for any lingering questions. So you can get those ready if you have any of those. Okay, seeing no budget questions for Lynn. Are there any other questions related to any aspects of the RFP information that the team has provided here today? Our intention is that we've provided and highlighted information that will help you submit successful applications. As you've heard reiterated throughout the pre-bid conference, it's essential to ensure you make the deadlines outlined in the RFP. We cannot move an application forward if you miss the financial viability deadline, if you miss the financial the sponsorship deadlines, as well as the most important deadline, which is the actual submission on September 16th at noon. There are no exceptions. If your application comes in at 12:01, we can't move it forward. So give yourself enough time to have it reviewed and uploaded so that there isn't a last-minute scramble. If you have questions that come to mind, you can use the Ask button in caps up until Monday, August 24th at 4 p.m., at which time that button is closed. It is your responsibility to come back into caps and pull down the Q&A document, which will be posted by August 27th at 4 p.m., right? So we're not going to send that out to folks. You have to come back into the system, pull the document. Anything in that question and answer document supersedes anything that was said or spoken here. If you have technical questions about the application, please use the help desk at cscbroward.org. And this recording will be available under the solicitation attachments in the CAPS system. We hope that this has been a helpful pre-bid conference for you, that you've gotten some important tips and strategies to submit a successful application for CSC's Asset-Based Community Development Administrative Support Organization, RFP. With that, anything else from the team? If not, we will adjourn the meeting and wish everyone a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.